The road to Raven's Hollow wasn't on any of the maps I used. Just a single red line carved into scorched desert, no signs, no mile markers. Just cracked dirt and faded tire grooves that vanished every quarter mile into open sand. Even my GPS gave up 20 minutes ago. All I had was a note in my glove box. Raven's Hollow. Ask for Mrs. Adelide. Keep your headlights on until you reach the porch. That note was from someone at Clearwater Energy. I never met the guy. Just a number and an email and a promise. 3 months of work surveying shale deposits in remote Arizona. 30% over base pay. Expenses covered. I didn't ask too many questions. I needed the money. The sun was beginning to dip low, burning orange across the dunes, casting long shadows that twitched every time my truck hit a bump. The dashboard clock blinked. See? 32 p.m. I wiped sweat from my brow. The AC in my Ford gave out 2 summers ago. The only thing blowing in here was a fan mounted on the dash. Just hot air and dust. My shirt clung to me like wet paper. The desert was quiet, too quiet. I hadn't passed another car in over an hour. Then I saw it. Tucked between 2 towering bluffs was a crooked mailbox marked Adelaide in cracked black paint. I turned left. The house wasn't much. Just a squat wooden structure with flaking white paint and a sagging red tile roof. Looked like it hadn't been updated since Eisenhower was president. A rocking chair swayed lazily on the porch despite the still air, creaking every few seconds like it was counting down to something. Behind the house sat a stone well, partially covered by a warped wooden lid. The desert around it was barren, no neighbors, no fences, just cactus and dirt. I parked in the shade, if you could call it that, killed the engine, and stepped out. The air hit me like a furnace blast. My boots crunched over gravel and dried out weeds as I approached the porch. That's when she appeared. I didn't hear her walk up. She was just there. A tall, rail-thin woman in a black wool dress far too heavy for this heat. Her white hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and her eyes, pale, gray, and glassy, felt like they could see through skin. Mr. Montgomery, she rasped. I nodded. Sawyer, you must be Mrs. Adelide. She didn't smile. Just reached out with a hand that looked like brittle tree bark and took the envelope of cash from my pocket. 2 months in advance. As discussed, I said, trying to keep it light. She nodded slowly, then reached into the folds of her dress and pulled out a folded, yellowed sheet of paper. Her fingers trembled not from weakness, but from effort, like she was resisting something. This, she said, is the list. The rules. You must follow them while you're here. Rules. I raised an eyebrow. Like house rules. She didn't blink. There are 9, she said. Some are about the house. Others are about Raven's Hollow itself. She pressed the paper into my palm. Her touch was ice cold. Obey them, or you won't leave. I unfolded the page once I was back in the house. The handwriting was in faded black ink flowing cursive, the kind you only see in century-old letters or ghost stories. I read them out loud. 1. Do not leave the house after 7. Lure p.m. if you must. Carry an oil lamp, not a flashlight, not your phone. 2. Do not look directly into the well. If you do and see movement, turn away immediately. Say aloud, I am thankful. Raven's Hollow. Balance. 3. Ignore knocks on the door after 9. 4 p.m. Do not open, no matter who is calling. Say, I am asleep. 4. Use water only between 0 a.m. and 0 p.m. After that, it changes. 5. If you see a person-shaped shadow in your home and you're alone, say aloud, I have permission to be here. Do not run. 6. Smudge unreadable. 7. Keep all lights yellow or warm toned. Do not use blue or LED lighting. 8. The rocking chair will stop only when watched. If it rocks while empty, do not sit in it. 9. Do not read Rule 9 until told. I froze. I looked back at the list. Rule 9 was there, but I hadn't been told to read it yet. What kind of messed up Airbnb horror nonsense was this? Then, outside, the cicadas stopped chirping, instant, all at once, like someone pulled the plug on nature. I looked at the clock. 6:58 p.m. I walked to the front window, heart pounding. The rocking chair had stopped. I could see the well from here. No movement. Then, tap, tap, tap. Not the front door. The tapping stopped the second I reached the hallway. Not gradually immediately, like whoever or whatever had been knocking knew I was listening. I stood there, oil lamp trembling slightly in my grip, watching the shadow beneath the back door for movement. Nothing, I swallowed. Just the wind, I whispered to myself, except there wasn't any wind. Just dry, stifling air and the heavy weight of silence pressing against the walls like a sleeping beast. I turned the lock, not to open it, just to make sure it stayed closed. Then I backed away slowly, retracing my steps to the front room. That's when I saw it. The rocking chair. It was moving again, just slightly, a gentle back and forth sway, like it was being nudged by invisible fingers. And I realized, with a cold knot forming in my gut, I hadn't been looking at it. I turned on the recorder. It was a habit from my engineering days. One of those little handheld audio recorders that clicked and whirred as it logged environmental anomalies. I'd used it to document tremors, gas leaks, even underground movement before. Never expected I'd be using it for this. I placed it on the coffee table and sat on the edge of the couch. Oil lamp resting beside me. The flame inside flickered erratically. My eyes flicked to the window. No wind. No movement. No bugs. No crickets. No natural night sounds. That wasn't normal. The desert, for all its emptiness, is alive after sundown, nocturnal, full of rustles and clicks and distant howls. But here nothing. Just the slow tick of the wall clock and the occasional creak of settling wood. And the chair, still rocking. It was 9:03 p.m. when the knocking returned. 3 raps, firm, measured, this time at the front door. I froze. Then came the voice. Sawyer. I recognized it instantly. Jack Brennan. We'd worked together in North Dakota, back when we were still slumming it for field experience. Smart guy, liked to drink too much, but solid. We hadn't spoken in months. Open up. Man, it's me. I stayed rooted to the couch, pulse hammering in my ears. Rule 3. Ignore knocks after 9:00 p.m. Say, I am asleep, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I was sure. I got up slowly, walked to the door, and peeked through the tiny peephole. There he was. Same beard, same stupid trucker hat, same slight limp from that old ankle injury. He looked real. Sawyer, he said again. Come on. Man, let me in. Something's wrong with this place. I need to talk to you. I hesitated. Then my phone rang. I snatched it up off the counter without looking at the number. Hello. Sawyer. Thank God you picked up. The voice was unmistakable. It's Jack. I'm in Phoenix. Are you okay? I stared at the figure still standing outside. He was waving now, smiling. Jack, you're not outside my door right now. There was a pause on the other end. What? No. Man, I just got off a video call with HQ. They're scrapping the whole Ravens Hollow project. Weird seismic activity. Nothing adding up. They said to get in touch with you ASAP. Where are you? Ravens Hollow, I said. Then quietly, there's someone outside pretending to be you. Another pause. Get away from the door. Sawyer, right now. I hung up. I am asleep, I said firmly. No response. I said it again, louder. I am asleep. The figure outside stopped waving. Its head tilted slowly, unnaturally far, like the muscles in its neck weren't built right. Then it walked away. Not turned, just glided sideways, drifting across the porch like smoke caught in a breeze. Out of view. I backed into the living room, picked up the recorder, and sat down again. The rocking chair had stopped. I didn't sleep. I sat there all night, watching the lamp burn low, listening for any more knocking, any more voices. They never came. But at exactly 3:13 a.m., the recorder picked up a sound I didn't hear in real time. I played it back as the sun started rising. 3 knocks, 1 whisper. Sawyer opened the... Well, morning light broke through the dusty windows, washing the room in pale gold. The world outside looked normal again. A lizard darted across the porch. The wind picked up. Birds chirped. It was like the night never happened. I made coffee on the old stovetop. The water smelled faintly metallic, but I didn't care. I needed something hot and grounding. The list of rules was still on the table. I read it again. Still 9 entries. Rule 6 was still smudged beyond recognition. Rule 9 still unread. But now, I wanted to read it. I needed to, and that's how I knew the rules were real. Because even thinking about breaking them made me feel like something in the walls was listening. At 8:42 a.m., I heard a voice behind me. Clear, soft, close. You shouldn't have answered him. I turned. No one there. Just the empty hallway. And a faint scent of lavender, the same smell I had noticed around the well. That's when it hit me. I never asked Mrs. Addie lied why the well was boarded up, and I really didn't want to know what was inside. I didn't go near the well that day. Hell, I didn't even look at it through the window. I kept the blinds drawn and moved every piece of furniture I could in front of the back door, just in case Jack decided to come back for round 2. Still had no idea how he mimicked the voice so perfectly. The tone, the cadence, the way Jack always dragged out my name like it was a punchline. Whatever that thing was, it had studied him and it knew how to wait. But not today, not in daylight. Instead, I tried to pretend life was normal. Opened my laptop, reviewed some geological survey files. The internet was garbage, but thankfully most of the maps were preloaded. My task was simple, just document any visible fault lines, measure seismic activity using portable gear, and send in a final report. Clearwater Energy was paying me a stupid amount to spend a few weeks in the desert scribbling notes, but I knew now it wasn't just about shale. They'd sent me out here alone for a reason, and I was beginning to wonder if that reason was less about oil and more about bait. Around noon, I called my contact at HQ. Voicemail. Called again. Nothing. Finally, I dialed Lila, a geologist from the Denver office I'd worked with before. She always picked up. Hey, it's Lila. Leave a message. I sighed, hung up, and started pacing. That's when I noticed it's something small, almost missable. The water in the glass beside the sink was moving. Just slightly. Ripples. I stared. No footsteps. No sound. But the surface was vibrating. I pressed my hand into the counter. Faint, very faint, like a low hum somewhere under the house. I grabbed my recorder and stepped outside. The moment I opened the door, heat slammed into me like a sledgehammer. Arizona sun baking down. The ground shimmered. I looked to the left, toward the well. It hadn't changed. Still crooked, still covered, still giving off that quiet wrongness like a wound left untreated. I thought about Rule 2. Do not look directly into the well. That wasn't going to be a problem. I set the recorder on the porch and walked the perimeter. Just like I would on a job site, I scanned the dry earth for cracks or shifts, any sign of subsurface instability. Nothing. But that vibration was real. I could feel it. I circled around the house. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the dust. Barefoot, small. They led from the side of the house toward the well, and stopped there. No return trail. I backed away, pulse picking up speed. A few feet from the edge of the porch, I spotted something else tucked in the shade of a sagging saguaro cactus. A tin lunchbox, red, rusted. Looked like it belonged to a kid from the 70s. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a child's drawing, folded in half. Paper brittle from age. A stick figure stood beside a house with the word "me" written above. Next to it, a large, jagged scribble, like a black cloud or a nest of worms. Red crayon underneath read, "It lives under the sand." I closed the box and backed away. That night, I didn't touch the lights, only the oil lamp. I even covered the blinking LEDs on my laptop and router with tape. Rule 7 was clear. No blue lights, warm tones only. No electricity. No exceptions. I triple-checked the locks, closed every window. I read the list again. My eyes kept landing on the smudged Rule 6. No matter how I squinted or angled the lamp, the words were illegible, like the ink had been scraped off, not faded, and that only made me want to read it more. Temptation was its own curse out here. Around 10:40 p.m., I tried to sleep. Didn't work. Every creak in the wall sounded like breathing. Every gust of wind like footsteps. The oil lamp's flame flickered again. Not from a breeze, there was no draft, but like it was reacting to something nearby. Then came the whisper. Soft. Right behind me. Sawyer. I turned fast. Lamp held high. Nothing. Just my reflection in the dusty mirror over the mantel. but something was off. It looked like me, but the face was just a little blurred, like it hadn't finished copying me yet. I stayed up, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the recorder clicked on by itself. A whir, a soft beep, then a voice. "It's almost time for you to see." And then scratching, not from the porch, not from the doors, from beneath the floorboards. The scratching was deliberate, not the frantic kind you'd hear from a raccoon or rat, but slow, measured like fingernails dragging across wood. Tracing the beams under the floor with intent, I grabbed the oil lamp and stood frozen in the middle of the living room. The flame cast long, twitching shadows across the ceiling, and for a second I thought I saw something pause just beneath my feet. And then it tapped, once, twice, 3 times, right under where I stood. "I hear you," I whispered. The tapping stopped. I didn't sleep again. By the time first light cut across the desert, I was still in the armchair, oil lamp long since burned out. I must have been staring at the rolls on the table for hours. I couldn't bring myself to move. My body ached. My eyes were dry, but I didn't dare shift. I was afraid if I stood up, I'd hear it again. Instead, I focused on the smudged Rule 6. My thumb traced the soft yellow paper around it. Why write 9 rules and make one unreadable? What was it hiding? The knocking had stopped. The rocking chair hadn't moved since the night before, but something had changed. And I didn't know if I was part of it yet, or just a witness. Around 10:00 m, my phone buzzed. Finally, a message from Lila. "Hey, just saw your missed call. Everything okay? Weird energy reading from your site's coordinates. HQ asked me to cross-reference. Call when you can." I didn't text back. Instead, I dialed immediately. She answered on the second ring. "Sawyer, Layla," I said. "You ever hear of a place called Raven's Hollow?" There was a pause on her end. "No." "Why? What's going on?" I looked out the window, then back to the recorder, still sitting on the coffee table like a loaded trap. "You ever get seismic feedback from a site with no fault lines?" "Sure. Sometimes. Heat pockets, mineral shifts, but not often." "Why?" "Because I think this site isn't just geologically unstable," I said. "I think it's cursed." She laughed softly at first, then heard the silence on my end. "You're serious?" she said. "What's happening out there?" I took a breath, trying to summarize everything without sounding like I'd lost my mind. "The rules," I finally said. "There are rules here. For staying alive. For not being taken." She didn't say anything. And then, Sawyer. I just pulled up an archived report from 2004. There was a Clearwater site survey near there. The file was sealed after 1 week. What happened? The lead engineer went missing. 2 others quit within 72 hours. There's no geological record of what they found, but the file has something unusual. A scanned note. In handwriting. What does it say? Her voice went flat. "Do not answer the voices that sound like your mother." I dropped the phone. 'Cause right then, someone knocked on the back door. "Sawyer, open up." "Honey, it's Mom." The voice was perfect. Warm, soft, slightly nasal, like my real mom's had been during the final months of chemo. But I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. I took the recorder and hit record, walking slowly toward the back door. "You've been so lonely. Sweetheart, let Mama in. Let me hold you one last time." I steadied my breath. "I'm not falling for it," I said through gritted teeth. The voice paused. Then it changed. Low, guttural. "Then open the well." I shoved the couch against the back door and sat down, shivering despite the desert heat. That's when I noticed something scratched into the wood of the coffee table, thin, almost invisible under the dust. I leaned closer. It was a word, not English, something that looked Cherokee. I pulled out my phone and searched a few phrases using an old Cherokee lexicon I had bookmarked from a different project in Oklahoma. Closest match. Ugvana tenvi ugdan av tenvi. They who whisper beneath. I stared at it. The symbol etched into the same spot where I had been setting the recorder every night. At dusk, the air shifted. I don't mean the temperature, I mean the pressure. Like a storm was building, but not above me. Below, the floorboards were warmer. Breathing, I grabbed the rule sheet again and flipped it over just in case. And there it was. On the back, faintly penciled in, almost invisible unless you tilted it in the fading light. Rule 6. If the whispers begin to sound like someone you love, run. That night, the rule stopped working. The oil lamp sputtered and died just after 9:00 p.m. I had just refilled it, but the flame hissed out anyway. I scrambled for a match, nothing. In the darkness, I could hear movement. From the porch, from the well, from beneath the floor. Then the knocks came. Front door, back door, ceiling. My name, over and over, dozens of voices, overlapping, all people I'd once known. Dad, Leela, Jack, my old college roommate, even the girl I kissed at senior prom. Sawyer, let us in. It's cold outside. You forgot us. We miss you. I shut my eyes and whispered the phrase from Rule 2. I am thankful. Raven's Hollow. Balance. But the voices didn't stop this time. They laughed. And then came the sound of the well lid moving. The sound of the well lid sliding off was like a coffin lid being pried open slow. Scraping. Dry. I couldn't see it from inside the house, but I heard every inch of movement. It echoed through the walls like a stone being dragged across bone. I backed into the kitchen, hands trembling, groping along the counter until I found my flashlight. I hesitated. Rule 1 had been clear. Use an oil lamp, never electric light, but the oil lamp was dead, and the dark was pressing in like wet cotton, so I clicked it on. The second the beam of cold, white light cut through the room, everything stopped. The voices, the knocking, even the creaking of the house. It was like the flashlight had hit pause on a nightmare. I moved the beam slowly to the door. Nothing. Then to the window. Still nothing. But when I swept the light across the hallway mirror, I saw it. A face, not mine, watching me. I dropped the flashlight. The beam skittered across the floor, stuttering wildly against the walls. I lunged for it, heart jackhammering. But by the time I grabbed it, the mirror was empty again. Just my own pale, hollow-eyed reflection blinking back at me. That was when I heard the thud, not outside. Inside, above me, in the attic. I didn't know the house even had an attic until that moment. But sure enough, just above the hallway near the bathroom, I saw the square outline of a pull-down hatch. The air beneath it was different, denser, like standing beneath a full water tower. I stared up at it, pulse screaming. No part of me wanted to go up there, but something was up there, and I needed to know what. I retrieved the recorder, hit record, and whispered a note into it. June 11th, 2:30 am. Confirmed activity in attic, possibly linked to Rule 6. Proceeding with caution. I set the flashlight between my teeth, grabbed the pull cord, and tugged. The hatch creaked open. A wooden ladder unfolded with a low groan. The air spilling out of the opening was ice cold, like the dead air inside a crypt. I climbed. The attic was small and box-like, framed by splintered beams and thin insulation. There were old trunks, a broken coat rack, and something wrapped in yellowing plastic sheeting shoved into the far corner. But it wasn't any of that caught my attention. It was the sound, a murmur faint, constant coming from inside the wall. I knelt and pressed my ear to the old plaster. Sawyer, Sawyer, open it, open it. I flinched back. Then I saw the crack, a hairline fissure along the wall, like someone had patched over it long ago, but it was starting to give way. I pressed my palm to it, soft, damp. The wall breathed under my touch. Then came a new voice. Clear, close. You're not real, it said. I bolted down the ladder, nearly tripping on the last rung, slamming the hatch shut behind me. The second it latched, the knocking returned, this time from inside the attic. 3 sharp thuds. I backed into the living room and sat on the floor, trying to slow my breathing. I stared at the rules again, heart still racing. That's when I noticed something new. A 10th rule. It hadn't been there before. It was scribbled in what looked like fresh ink, as if someone had just added it during the night. Rule 10. If the house begins adding rules on its own, you are no longer the only one living here. Dawn broke in streaks of a burnt orange across the desert. I didn't feel relief, just dread. because the well was now open and I could see something moving inside, something pale, something rising. It stood at the edge of the well, or rather, near it. Its outline was wrong, like it was flickering in and out of visibility, never quite whole, tall, white, limbs too long, no face, just smooth skin stretched over where features should be. I stood frozen at the window, flashlight in one hand, recorder in the other. It didn't move, not like a living thing. It swayed gently, as if the wind affected it differently than everything else around it. The cactus beside it didn't budge. Only it. A soft vibration passed under my feet again, like something big shifting beneath the house, under the ground, stretching across Raven's Hollow. I closed the curtain and backed away from the window, whispering into the recorder. Dax, 47M. Humanoid entity sighted near the well. Unknown origin, possibly linked to Rule 2. Form unstable, no facial features. My voice cracked near the end, because I wanted to stop documenting this like a scientist. But some part of me believed that as long as I treated this like a report like data, it wouldn't swallow me whole. Later that day, I tried to leave, not flee, just drive to the nearest town. Refuel, get reception, maybe call HQ in person. Anything to get out of the loop I was trapped in. But the truck wouldn't start. Not a dead battery, not a fuel issue. It just wouldn't respond. The key turned, lights blinked, but the engine wouldn't catch. Like the ignition refused. I popped the hood, checked everything I could. I'm no mechanic, but it wasn't a mechanical problem. It was something else. I tried walking, packed a backpack, took water, and started down the dirt path I came in on. My GPS showed Route 72 just 12 miles east. I figured I could make it in a few hours. After the first hour, I stopped seeing cacti. After the second, the sun was higher, but the shadows were wrong. They pointed toward me, not away. And after 3 hours, I realized I'd walked the loop back to the house, right back to Raven's Hollow. There was a new note pinned to the door, not handwritten this time, typed, clean, fresh, like it came from a printer still warm from ink. Welcome back. You are not done learning. I tore it down and crumpled it, but my hands were shaking, because it wasn't just the note. There were new footprints in the sand, leading into the house. Small, barefoot, like the ones I'd seen near the well. Inside, everything looked untouched, except for the bathroom mirror. Words had been written in the condensation, though I hadn't used hot water in days. They said, "Look into the well." And below that, in smaller print, "Bring the flashlight, bring the recorder, leave the rules." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the door, gripping the flashlight and recorder like weapons. I replayed the audio from the attic again, the part where the voice whispered, "You're not real." It had sounded like my voice, but there was no echo, no background noise, nothing to indicate it had come from a room, or a speaker, or even a mouth, like the house had thought it into existence, or worse, recorded it from a future that hadn't happened yet. At 2:13 a.m., the voices came back. This time, they didn't knock, they scratched from inside the walls, under the floor, even in the drains. Dozens of whispers, dozens of people I knew, some of them long dead. And then, one clear voice rose above the rest. "A child, I know you're scared." I was 2, I held my breath. "But you're already part of it now. You've seen too much. The only way out is down. We live in the rules. We are made of them." And then, just as quickly as they started, the voices stopped. Silence fell. Not peace, just silence. The kind that waits for a decision, the kind that knows you're out of time. I looked at the rule sheet one last time. 10 rules, no explanations, and a blank space at the bottom, just enough for one more. I picked up a pen. My hand shook, but I added one anyway. Rule 11. If the house gives you an invitation, you will eventually accept. The next morning, the air was heavy with silence. I woke up in the armchair, my back sore, the flashlight still clutched in my fist like a crucifix. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I must have drifted off. The recorder had stopped. Battery dead, and someone had moved the rules. They weren't on the table where I left them. They were on the floor, spread out, flattened, like someone had been reading them carefully. Like someone else. I checked the doors. Still locked. Windows still sealed. But the rocking chair on the porch, it was swaying. I stepped outside. The desert was cold. The early morning sun wasn't strong enough yet to burn off the chill that clung to my skin like static. There were footprints again, but these weren't from a barefoot child. These were mine, dozens of them, going back and forth, circling the house, spiraling outward in a wide radius. I hadn't walked these, but they were definitely from my boots. I followed the outermost ring for almost 10 minutes before I saw the new structure. It hadn't been there before. A small shack. It was built from old barn wood, slanted awkwardly like it had been thrown together overnight. A faded sign was nailed above the door. Office of Rules and Revisions. No hinges, no windows, just a latchless door standing ajar. Something about the angle made it seem taller than it really was. Unnatural, like it leaned away from me when I looked too directly at it. I approached slowly, the ground crunching underfoot. I didn't call out. I didn't want to know who or what might answer. Inside was a single filing cabinet, rusty, 3 drawers, and beside it, a black rotary phone. It began to ring. I let it go to the 3rd ring before picking up. Montgomery, I said, voice hoarse. The voice on the other end was faint, tinny, but familiar. Sawyer, you have a decision to make. I froze. It was me, my own voice, speaking from the other end. Who are you? I whispered. The line buzzed. Then, you're the one who asked the house for answers. You don't get to be surprised when it answers back. My throat went dry. What's in the well? Silence. Then, all the people who didn't follow the rules. The phone went dead in my hand. I left the shack and returned to the house in silence. The desert air pressing in on all sides like a vacuum. I was halfway back when I saw something written in the sand. Fresh. Big letters. Open the well. 7 nights remain. That night, I didn't barricade the doors. I sat at the kitchen table with the rules laid out in front of me. Oil lamp flickering. Pen in hand. I started writing my own additions. Because the house had changed the rules once, that meant I could too. I wrote, Rule 12, if the house gives you a test, pass it with silence. Rule 13, when something speaks in your voice, ask it what it regrets. Rule 14, every night you survive, one truth will reveal itself. And then I waited. At 3, we'll let him. The front door opened by itself. No wind, no footsteps, just unlocked. Swinging wide with a soft creak, I stood slowly, grabbed the recorder, and pressed record. Night 5. The house is inviting me again. I will not speak. I will not ask. I will only witness. I stepped outside. The moon was red, like rust bleeding into milk. The well lid was still open, and the thing that had hovered near it before, it was gone. Instead, something new stood at the edge. A mirror. Tall. Oval, standing unsupported in the dirt. Its surface shimmered like water, despite the windless night, and in it, I saw myself, not as I was, as I could be, eyes hollow, skin dry, mouth sewn shut, holding the rule sheet in both hands like scripture. The mirror began to whisper, in every voice I knew, 7 nights, 6 rules left. You wrote the wrong ones. Sawyer, you don't make the rules. We do. Come closer. I turned away. I whispered to myself, not to the mirror. I am thankful. Raven's hollow. Balance. The mirror cracked. A long, jagged fracture down the center. A scream rose from it, not mine. Not anyone's. Something older. Raw. Then the wind returned, whipping sand and ash into the air. And the mirror shattered, dissolving into dust that scattered toward the stars. I stood in the silence, trembling. I'd survived 5 nights, but something told me the house was just getting started. The following day, the sun rose like a bruise across the sky, swollen and purple, casting strange shadows across the yard. It felt like the day itself was just as unsettled as I was. The ground was still littered with the shattered remains of the mirror, the fine dust glinting like fragments of a lost soul. I didn't feel safe here, not anymore. The rules, my additions were still on the table. But I didn't think they were enough. I needed more answers, more certainty. And for that, I would need to go to the source. I had to find the well. I grabbed my flashlight and the remaining pages of the rules, the air heavy with the scent of burnt sage. My shoes crunched over the gravel as I walked toward the back of the property. The house creaked behind me, like it was shifting in its sleep, watching. The wind picked up as I neared the well, and the shadows stretched longer than they should have been. It wasn't the wind that made them stretch, though. I could feel it now, the pull. The well was still there, the lid wide open, just as I had left it the night before. I approached slowly, flashlight flickering in my hand. At the bottom, I saw something moving. A figure, someone or something was in there. I bent down, but the wind screamed louder, pulling at my clothes, at my skin. The figure in the well became clearer. It was a man, at least. It looked like one. His eyes were hollow, like black pits, but there was a faint reflection in them, something I couldn't place. I backed away from the edge. "Who are you?" I called out. The man in the well didn't respond, but I saw the smile then, wide, unnaturally wide, and it moved like liquid, stretching across his face until it almost split his skull. The voice came next. No words, just a low, grinding sound that vibrated my bones. Then it stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. And then, just as suddenly as it had all started, I heard a voice behind me. "Sawyer, it's time to go inside." I spun around, but no one was there, except for the rocking chair. It was rocking again, slowly, gently, as though someone had just left it. I stood frozen for a moment, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling. Then, the voice spoke again, this time closer. "It's too late, Sawyer." I whipped around, the flashlight's beam landing on the chair, but no one was there. The wind had stopped completely, and the house itself was silent. I could feel it now, the pressure, the waiting. I turned back to the well. The man was gone, but the reflection in the water, that was me. I grabbed the rules sheet again and flipped through it. My hands trembled. The words on the page looked like they were shifting, rearranging themselves as if the house were changing them. I knew I wasn't the first to come here. I wasn't the first to survive the 7 nights, but no one else had made it out. No one had written about it. There was nothing, not even a whisper, and I had no idea what came after the final rule. The rules weren't enough anymore. I turned back to the house. It felt like it was breathing. I could feel its pulse underneath the floorboards, each heartbeat a reminder that it was alive, that it wanted something from me. The door was wide open, and the air felt thick with expectation. I entered the house, my feet heavy on the floor. My mind raced with questions. Questions I knew I would never get answers to. I walked toward the table where the rules were scattered. Had someone else been here before me? I shook the thought from my head, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was somehow waiting. In the next room, the kitchen light flickered on. No one was there. I swallowed the lump in my throat, a cold sweat creeping down my spine. The sound of creaking floorboards echoed from upstairs. Then, as I reached the kitchen doorway, I saw it, a piece of paper, torn at the edges, fluttering in the breeze that had suddenly returned. I hesitated. The note was for me. I snatched it up, my hands shaking. It was a new rule. It was handwritten in a frantic scrawl. Rule 15, if you see yourself in the well, you are no longer you. It made no sense, but the truth was clearer now. I didn't just need to survive these 7 nights. I needed to break them. I needed to change the rules before it was too late, and I had no idea what that would cost. As I stared at the rule in my hand, the rocking chair began to move again, and I could hear footsteps, real footsteps. They were behind me. I didn't turn around. The footsteps stopped directly behind me. I still hadn't turned around. My pulse beat in my ears like a war drum. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, to scream, to move. But the rules had taught me something more valuable than fear. Sometimes, stillness is survival. I clenched the paper in my hand. Rule 15, if you see yourself in the well, you are no longer you. I had seen myself, but that thing, it wasn't me. And now, whatever stood behind me, I knew it wanted to convince me otherwise. The voice came next, warm, familiar, my own. "Sawyer," it said gently, like it was wrapping my name in velvet. "You've been so brave, but it's time to come back now. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I clenched my jaw. Still didn't turn. It circled me. I saw its feet first. Pale, smudged with ash and dust. The toenails were wrong, flat and smooth like shell casings. Each step it took left no sound, only a faint print in the worn floorboards. Then it leaned into view. My face, but off, too smooth, too symmetrical, like someone had sculpted me from wax but had never seen a real human up close. Its eyes were blank, no irises, just milky, shifting pools like the well water at midnight. You're tired, it said. Come sit, let me finish this for you. I backed away. You're not me, I whispered. It tilted its head. The smile didn't waver. I know the scar behind your left ear. I remember the first rig fire in Texas. I remember the smell of Lila's shampoo, citrus, and dust. That stopped me. My knees weakened, because that was true. That was a detail I hadn't spoken aloud in years. How do you know that? I asked. Because you already gave it to me. It stepped forward, piece by piece. Every night you stayed here, every time you broke a rule, you fed me memories. It tapped its temple. You're inside me now, but I'm better, stronger, less afraid. Its smile wider than human anatomy should allow. I turned and ran, not out the front door, not toward the well, upstairs. The house groaned beneath my weight, each step a scream of wood and rusted nails. I reached the top and threw open the first door. The attic, a space I hadn't dared revisit since the whispering tape. But now, I had no choice. Inside, the recorder from night 2 still sat on the floor. Its battery light blinked red. I grabbed it anyway. The room felt colder now, the corners darker than before, like they stretched farther than geometry should allow. I slammed the attic door shut and turned to face it, hoping, praying that thing couldn't follow me here, that maybe there were places even it wouldn't go. The quiet was unbearable. I rewound the recorder, desperate for answers. It clicked and began to play. Not my voice, not even English. The voice on the tape spoke in a low, droning language, guttural syllables, something ancient. Each word scratched something primal inside my skull. It wasn't a message. It was a ritual, a chant. And the more I listened, the more I understood. This house, Raven's Hollow, it wasn't haunted. It was inhabited, not by ghosts, not by monsters, but by a sentient rule, a living law, an ancient force that didn't care about justice or safety, only obedience. I grabbed the rule sheet again, scratched in a new line beneath the last. Rule 16. When the rules start speaking through you, write faster than they can whisper. Then I wrote another. Rule 17. The house doesn't punish disobedience. It consumes it. And finally, Rule 18. There are more than 7 nights. There are only as many as you refuse to learn. A knock sounded on the attic door. Soft, measured, 3 taps, like a metronome marking the final moment of a song. I stood, recorder in one hand, rule sheet in the other. The voice returned. Sawyer, open up. You wrote me into being. Don't you want to see how your story ends? I didn't answer. I walked to the far end of the attic where the floorboard was loose and pried it up. Below it, dirt, crumbling rock, a narrow crawl space descending into darkness, and a scent like burned paper and seawater. The house had always been bigger than it looked. I dropped the recorder into the hole first, then I followed it down. If I wanted to learn what Raven's Hollow really was, I had to go deeper than any rule had written. I had to find the origin. The crawl space swallowed me whole. At first, I moved on hands and knees, the dirt pressing into my palms, the ceiling low and crumbling above me. It smelled like old copper, wet leaves, and something faintly electric like ozone before a lightning strike. There was no light, only the weak pulse of my flashlight, now flickering more often than not, like it was trying to warn me. I don't know how long I crawled. Time was strange down here. My watch had stopped stuck at 11:47, the same minute I'd first heard my own voice outside my body. Eventually, the passage opened into a larger chamber. The air was freezing, and I wasn't alone. Dozens of them stood around the perimeter. Figures, pale, thin, motionless. They looked human at a glance, but wrong in the ways that only make sense when seen in the dark. Their limbs were just slightly too long, their heads tilted at impossible angles. Their mouths were sealed shut, not sewn, not taped, just gone, like the face had decided speech was no longer required. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal made of black stone, slick with condensation. On top of it, a book, bound in red leather, the pages yellowed and curling. It radiated heat and cold at the same time. My breath steamed out in plumes as I stepped closer. The figures didn't move, but I could feel their gaze behind me. I opened the book. The pages were in a blank. They were filled. Each page contained a different set of rules, all handwritten, all by different hands. Thousands of them. Rules for this house, rules for that well, rules for sleeping, eating, breathing, speaking. Some were scratched out violently. Others burned at the edges. Some bled. And every so often, in the margins, there was a name. Sawyer Montgomery. My name, more than once. My fingers trembled as I flipped to the back. A fresh page, waiting, and a pen already resting in the gutter of the spine. I didn't remember picking it up, but it was in my hand now, and I knew what I had to do. I wrote, Ravens Hollow, version 27. Primary rule keeper, Sawyer Montgomery, status, in progress. Then I wrote, Rule 19. A rule unwritten is a rule unbroken. Rule 20. The house feeds on pattern. Break 1. Rule 21. Don't finish this list. The pen fell from my hand, clattering to the stone. The moment I stopped writing, the air changed. The figures turned to me, not fast, not jerky, just unified. And from their mouths that should not have existed came a sound, not a voice. Low, harmonic, like the tone a crystal glass makes just before it shatters. My vision swam. The book slammed shut. I backed away, eyes on the pedestal, when something behind me whispered, You're almost ready. I turned. The one who looked like me was standing at the tunnel entrance, his face calm, blank, no longer smiling. He spoke without moving his lips. You broke the first law. Sawyer, you rewrote it. You have been chosen to carry it forward now. I tried to answer, but my throat tightened. My voice wouldn't come. The mimic smiled again, but this time it looked tired, almost sympathetic. Every place like this needs a keeper, and when one leaves, another is born. He turned to go, then paused. You were never here to escape. Sawyer, you were here to replace. Then he was gone. I stayed in the chamber for what felt like hours. The book wouldn't open again, and the figures, they sat now, cross-legged, heads bowed, like statues waiting for worshippers who never came. My flashlight died, but I didn't need it anymore. I could see perfectly. I climbed back out when the ground began to tremble, some kind of shift in the foundation. The tunnel narrowed behind me like it was sealing itself, refusing re-entry. Back in the attic, everything was still. The house was silent, and outside, the first rays of morning sunlight crept through the dusty windows like timid fingers. I sat in the attic and listened to the recorder one more time. It played my voice. Night 6. I think I know what the house wants now. I don't think it wants to hurt me. Not really. I think it wants me to remember. And then forget. The recorder cut out. That night, I didn't sleep because I wasn't sure anymore who I was. Sawyer Montgomery, oil engineer, or Sawyer Montgomery, rule keeper of Ravens Hollow. And maybe maybe those weren't two different people. Just one who forgot the last time he lived here. The next morning was wrong. Not the kind of wrong you can name. It was in the air, the way the dust didn't move when I opened the window, or the way the coffee pot began brewing on its own though I hadn't filled it with water. Outside, the sky was washed in a color that didn't exist before. A dull, grayish amber like something out of a dream you forgot right after waking. But I wasn't dreaming. Not anymore. The rule sheet was no longer on the table. Instead, someone or something had replaced it with a ledger. Its pages were crisp, white, blank, except for one line at the top. To break the curse, you must pass it on. My heart sank, because I knew what that meant. I poured myself a cup of coffee I hadn't made and sat at the table, staring at the ledger like it might attack me if I blinked. That voice, the one that used mine, had said I was chosen to carry the law forward. that I'd become the new rule keeper, and it was right, whether I agreed or not. The house had accepted me, the hollow had bound me, and now it needed the next you. I turned to the back of the ledger, a list of names, dates. Each entry ended the same way: vacated, replaced. The last name on the list, Jack Brennan, dated nearly a year ago. I dropped the book. My hand shook as I reached for my phone. I hadn't turned it on in days. It booted slowly, its screen dim. Even at full brightness, dozens of voicemails, text messages from Lila, my mother's old number, even my own, all of them garbled, unreadable, but one voicemail played automatically. It was Jack, his real voice. Sawyer, I think I left something behind. I'm sorry. I didn't want it to be you, but they don't give you a choice, do they? You won't remember all of it. Not at first, but the house will. It always remembers. If you're hearing this, I guess it worked. I guess I'm free. Click, I screamed, not out loud, but inside, where no one could hear it, the kind of scream that cracks ribs and splinters memory. He had known. Jack had been the rule keeper before me, and he had passed it on to me. That night, the wind returned, and so did the rules. Tacked to the front door. No envelope, no explanation, just the list. But it was different now. Shorter, sharper, and written in my handwriting. Rule 1, do not deny the house. Rule 2, the replacement must not be told. Rule 3, record everything. The hollow feeds on memory. Rule 4, at the end of your 7th night, the house will offer a door. If you walk through it, you leave. If you stay, you become. Rule 5, do not stay. I folded the paper, slid it into the ledger. Then I sat in the rocking chair and waited. Just before midnight, headlights appeared on the distant dirt road. Dust bloomed in the moonlight like a ghost rising from the ground. The same way I had arrived, a Ford pickup. Not mine, newer, shown year. A stranger stepped out, young, nervous, wearing an old oil field jacket with a stitched name tag. Garze. I didn't know him, but I knew what he'd come for. He knocked once on the door. I didn't answer. Instead, I left the keys under the cactus pot on the porch, just like Adelaide had done for me. And I whispered, not to him, but to the house. I've done my part. Let me forget. The lights dimmed. The air held its breath, and the door slowly creaked open, not from my hand, but from within. I stepped out into the night, clutching only the ledger and a bag. The desert swallowed me in silence, and behind me, I heard the house breathe again. It had a new guest, a new set of nights, a new soul to feed. But before I left the hollow for good, I wrote one final rule in the back of the ledger. Rule 22. If you find this book, burn it. Don't read further. Don't come looking for me. And for the love of God, don't answer the knock. I didn't go far. I told myself I would. That I'd put hundreds of miles between me and Raven's Hollow. That I'd change my name, burn the ledger, maybe even go back to Texas and pretend the rig job was still waiting, but 3 towns over. In a dusty diner with humming fluorescent lights and cracked vinyl booths, I found myself doing something I swore I wouldn't. I opened the book again, and on the first page, in ink that hadn't been there before, someone had written, "Welcome back, Sawyer. The house remembers." I slammed the book shut and shoved it under the table. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with sunburned arms and tired eyes, gave me a side glance but said nothing. She poured me more coffee and dropped the check silently. On the receipt, instead of a total, someone had scrawled in red ballpoint, "You left the door open." I stood up so fast the booth squeaked. I drove for hours. No music, no stops. The desert landscape blurred past, cracked and endless, like I hadn't escaped the hollow at all, just brought a piece of it with me. When I finally pulled over to sleep, I parked on a dead-end dirt road just outside Winslow. No houses, no lights, only stars, the kind that didn't twinkle. They watched. I dreamed, and in the dream, the house was burning. But it wasn't in pain. It was laughing inside the flames. I saw them, the figures from the tunnel, the pale mimic, even Adelaide, now young, vibrant, and barefoot in the firelight, dancing in slow circles as the walls collapsed. And over it all, I heard my own voice, whispering the rules like a bedtime story. each one ending in obey or remember. I woke up choking. Smoke. No, just the scent of something old. Like wet ashes soaked in gasoline. The ledger had opened itself again. This time, the pages were blank, but the words began to appear as I looked at them. My thoughts, my fears, even this sentence. Now, I slammed it shut again, buried it in the glove box beneath a torn map and a flashlight that hadn't worked in weeks. But I knew I couldn't outrun it, because the rules didn't belong to the house anymore. They belonged to me. 2 nights later, I stopped at a roadside bar called the Gutter Tap, trying to feel normal again. Beer, neon signs, a TV in the corner playing a muted game I didn't care about. That's when I saw Garza, the new tenant. He was sitting at the far end of the bar, pale, unshaven, ironed sunken like he hadn't slept since the night I'd left the keys under the cactus. He didn't see me. He was writing, frantically, on bar napkins. I walked past him to the bathroom, and as I did, I caught a glimpse of the napkin in his hand. It said, Rule 4, the mirror doesn't reflect you after 2 m. That's when it shows what wants to replace you. I didn't stop him. Couldn't, because that's how this works. You don't warn them. You just hope they survive. Back in my truck, I sat in the dark and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked the same, but it held something else now. A weight and a question I couldn't shake. If the curse requires a keeper, does freeing yourself just mean damning the next person? My phone buzzed. Block number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. It was a child's voice. Soft. Broken. Daddy, I'm still in the well. Why didn't you come back? I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor. Screen spiderwebbing on impact. I didn't pick it up because I knew that voice wasn't real, but it wasn't lying either. The next morning, I found another napkin tucked under my windshield wiper. From Garza, maybe, or something else. Scrawled in desperate handwriting. They don't make rule keepers. They break them until they become one. I left the napkin there, let the rain smear the ink into oblivion. Then I drove east, not to run, but to look, because I had one last question I needed answered. Who wrote the first rule? And if I found him, maybe I could end this. I found her in Louisiana, at least. I think I did. A woman named Clara Jo Mayfield, now in her 80s, living in a shack deep in the bayou with more crucifixes on the walls than furniture. I tracked her down from one of the earliest names in the ledger ink, so faded it barely existed anymore. When I knocked, she didn't open the door. She just shouted from inside, "If you're carrying that damn book, set it on the porch and back away." I did, slowly. The screen door creaked open 2 minutes later, and she stepped out, barefoot, white hair braided tight, dragging an oxygen tank behind her. She didn't touch the ledger. She looked through it, as if it weren't even there. Then she looked at me. "You wrote your first rule yet?" I nodded. "That's how it starts. House don't keep people. It teaches them how to keep it." Inside, the house smelled of sweet grass and mold. A cast iron stove burned orange in the corner. Clara poured chicory coffee into a chipped mug and handed it to me like we were old friends. "You think you're the first one trying to break the cycle?" I shook my head, but I hoped she'd tell me I was the last. They always think that. She sighed. "But the hollow's older than asphalt and bad decisions. You can't undo it. You just write a better version." I showed her my list. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink when she saw the mimic rule. Instead, she pointed to the final entry I had scratched in about burning the book. "That won't work," she said. "Ask yourself, boy, when's the last time you saw paper burn without turning to something else?" I didn't have an answer, because she was right. Then what do I do? I asked. "You finish your 7th night. You make it count. You give the next one a better map than the one you got. And if you're lucky, if the hollow's in a generous mood, you get to forget." I laughed, bitter and dry. "That's the prize. Forgetting. Forgetting is the only thing that keeps a soul from rot." She handed me something before I left. A cassette tape. Old, unlabeled. "I recorded it back in '76, she said. "Last night I was in the hollow. Play it on your 7th. What's on it?" "Not what. Who?" I didn't listen right away. I drove west again, back toward Arizona. back toward the house. The ledger never left my lap the entire time. Its pages now filled themselves. Maps, names, dates, a diagram of the attic crawl space I never drew, a drawing of Garza sleeping, and under it, night 5. He's dreaming of the mirror now. When I crossed into the state line, my radio turned on by itself. AM band, white noise, then music, a scratchy, warbled lullaby I didn't recognize. But I remembered I'd heard it before, from my childhood bedroom, the night my father vanished. That night, I camped just outside of Raven's Hollow. I couldn't make myself go back yet. Not completely. I sat by the fire, stared into the flame, and finally slid Clara's tape into my truck's dusty cassette deck. It hissed, then played. This is Clara Jo Mayfield, former rule keeper. ID 004. If you're hearing this, it means you've made it to the end, or maybe just another beginning. The Hollow's rules change, but the trap stays the same. The house don't want obedience, it wants memory. That's the trick. You think you're making rules to survive, but really, you're just making anchors. Then her voice dropped. If you want out, truly out, you need to find the original rule. It's not written in the ledger, not passed in a note. It was spoken once, long ago. You'll know it when you hear it, because it'll sound like your own voice, begging to forget. Click. The tape ended, but something else started. A new voice from behind me, breathy, soft. Sawyer, come inside. It's almost time. I turned. No one, just my own shadow stretching long across the desert floor, cast by a fire that had burned out. I walked the last mile into Raven's Hollow. No headlights, no engine noise, just the crunch of sand under my boots and the pulse of something ancient crawling beneath the earth. The house came into view around 3. It looked smaller now, more like a shadow of itself than a real structure, like it was tired or waiting. The front door was open. The cactus pot had been smashed. No sign of Garza, no sound inside, just an overwhelming emptiness like the building itself was holding its breath. I stepped inside without knocking. Everything was as I'd left it. The rocking chair still faced the window. The rule sheet was pinned to the wall with a nail I didn't put there, but the rules had changed again. Now there were 12. Some I recognized, others were new. Rule 7. Do not stand in the same spot for more than 3 minutes after midnight. Rule 9. If you see your own face inside the house, leave the room immediately. Rule 11. Never read a rule out loud unless you're alone. And Rule 12. It was written in red ink, not pen. Ink. Rule 12. There is no end, only replacements. I read it again and again, trying to make it not true. Trying to find some loophole in the wording, like it was a contract I could twist or outsmart. But it wasn't a contract, it was a verdict. I lit the oil lamp. The room responded. The shadows on the wall began to move slow at first, like tide water crawling across sand, then faster. They weren't cast by the lamp, they were using it. I stood perfectly still, counting the seconds in my head. Not Rule 7, not yet. The hallway to room 3 yawned open like a mouth, and in the corner of my eye, I saw her again. The mimic, same white dress, same long black hair, same lack of a face. Only this time, she didn't point. She gestured, come, and I did, because I was tired of pretending I had a choice. Inside room 3, the mirror had returned. It was taller now, narrower, its frame carved from a black wood that pulsed slightly, like muscle flexing under skin. I looked, and what I saw wasn't me. It was my father, not as I remembered him, jovial, scruffy, tired from drilling. This version was raw, eyes hollow, voice ragged. He didn't speak, but his mouth moved. I leaned closer, read his lips, help me forget. The room tilted. I felt myself pulled inward. The mirror glowed blue and hummed, low and full, like a chant song beneath breath. I reached forward, and the mirror grabbed back. The mimic pulled me out just in time. Or maybe she didn't pull me. Maybe she just snapped the mirror shut behind me before it was too late. Either way, I collapsed onto the floor of room 3, breathing hard, covered in dust, and something else. Ash. The The kind you find at the base of a burned offering. On the nightstand, I found the ledger again. It had opened to a new page. At the top, in neat script, 7th night, witnessing. Beneath it, an empty space. Waiting, I wrote. I don't remember what I wrote, but my hands moved until dawn. Words spilled out like blood from a reopened wound. I filled 5 pages, maybe more. When I stopped, the lamp had gone out, and so had the sun. It was dawn, but the world outside was dark gray. Like the hollow had stolen the sunrise. I stood, walked to the door. Outside, a new truck pulled up. Not Garza's, someone else. A woman this time, dark hair, sunglasses, a clipboard in her hand, and a hesitation in her step I recognized all too well. The cycle had already begun again. I didn't wait for her to knock. I left the keys under the cactus, taped the new rule sheet to the door, and on the back, I wrote, "If you read this far, I'm sorry." I drove east for 3 days. Didn't sleep, didn't stop, didn't speak to anyone. The ledger stayed in the passenger seat, unopened, but I could still hear it, whispering, rustling like old parchment turning itself. By the time I hit Oklahoma, I threw it out the window, or thought I did, 'cause the next morning, when I woke up in a rest stop parking lot, with the sunrise spilling orange across the windshield, it was sitting in my lap, open to a blank page. At the top, next rule. I closed it. Didn't tear it out. Didn't write. I just closed it, 'cause I was done making rules. That's how it traps you, not with ghosts or whispers or wells, but by turning you into the warden, and the warden always stays. I tried to start over. Rented an apartment. Got a job with a water treatment company in Missouri. The hours were clean. The pay was dull. My supervisor never asked about the scar on my face or the twitch in my left eye whenever I passed a mirror. For a while, it worked. For a while, I almost believed I was free. But then came the knock. Not at night, middle of the day. A mailman with a small cardboard package. No return address. Inside, a Polaroid photo of me standing at the front window of the hollow house, staring out. Except I hadn't been there in weeks, and the version of me in the photo had no eyes. Just 2 pits of burned-in shadow. That night, I dreamed of the well again. But this time, I wasn't at the top. I was below. The stone walls were slick. The air was wet with rot. And above me, silhouettes gathered. Dozens of them, all holding pieces of paper. Rules. Mine. Clara's. Adelaide's. All of them. They dropped them into the well, one by one. And as each rule fell, I forgot a piece of who I was. When I woke up, I couldn't remember my father's voice, or the name of the street I lived on as a child, or the color of my first car. The hollow hadn't let me go. It had just loosened the chain. I moved again. Changed phones, jobs, names, but every now and then, a new rule appears, carved into a hotel nightstand, scrawled on the back of a bus ticket, etched into frost on my rearview mirror. Most recently, this one, Rule 0. Do not tell others about the rules, which, of course, I've just broken. So if you're reading this, if you found this story online or heard it whispered in some late night podcast, or scrawled on a bathroom stall in a gas station outside Tempe, know that I'm not writing to warn you. I'm writing to say, I'm sorry, because you've seen them now. And once you've seen the rules, they start to see you. Lock your doors after sunset. Never answer to your own voice if it calls from behind you. And if you ever find yourself in the middle of nowhere, at a house with a rocking chair that creaks without wind, turn around. Don't go in. Whatever they offer, it's not worth what you'll lose. And if you can't resist, if you do go in, then here's one final thing to remember. There is no last rule. There's only the one you'll write next.